So today I've got this Mitsubishi. It's a little 37-inch LCD TV. It's a model LT37131. And the problem that we're having, hard to see down here in the lower corner, the little blue light just continues to blink, which means the set is in the boot up process. Normally this takes about 60 to 90 seconds on most Mitsubishi TVs. This one does it just continually. So let me show you a couple things that you can look for real quickly on these. So the very first thing I notice is when I turn the set on, from the back of the set I hear a high-pitched whine. And so I want to check the voltages over here to make sure I've got my standby voltage. So this is the only voltages you're really concerned about, the 12-volt supply. Let's take a look and see if any of the other ones are active. 1.7. These go to the inverter. They're actually all labeled here, very easy to follow. 21-volt audio source. Yeah, that's there. Actually, I'm sorry, these go to the main board. There's another sub-power supply right over here with some capacitors. You could look at those and see if they're bulged or not, but let's go over to the main board and take a look around. Okay, so on this one, if you follow the main 12-volt connector, it comes out right here from the power supply to the main board, and it's got these four little power supply circuits, and you can measure the far side of this coil is the output side of these little power supplies. 2.6 volts, 3.3, 5 volts, and if I can keep my probe on there, 1.8 volts. So we know those are all working, and they all seem to be okay. I've already done some preliminary troubleshooting, and I've actually found the problem that this set has. And so the biggest problem that I've ever had on these Mitsubishi TVs are these 100 microfarad capacitors that are the filters for these regulator IC chips. And so as you go around, you can probe these things, and you can see normally you'll see an input and an output. So there's a 12-volt input and a 12-volt output, or 9-volt output, I'm sorry. 1.19 volts, which just seems to be very low. This is the input, 2.6. 5 volts. 5 volts. 12 volts. 1.8. The only one that seemed to be odd was this one, 1.19. And so I went around and I checked several circuits on this set and came to the conclusion that it had a couple bad capacitors, and I'll show you how I found those real quick. Ultimately on this one, it got to the point where I had to go through with the oscilloscope here, and I don't have it triggered on anything because all I'm looking for is I want to look on the positive side of these power supply filter capacitors and just see if I see any abnormal waveforms. And so right now I've got it set on 1/10 of a volt per division. So I see just about 1/10 of a volt of noise on that one. And the reason it's not full on it is full on the oscilloscope screen, but on the camera it looks like it's not. And the reason is because of the shutter speed. It's cutting off part of the trace. And so the biggest problem I found was this capacitor right here. And you can see that one's got almost a full screen. So there's 1/2 volt per division on my scope right there. And so it's got about 1.5 volts of noise on that line, and that actually is the input. Very hard to see because I have it zoomed out. The input to this regulator IC right here. And so these two capacitors, this one didn't have much, but it does have some RF on it. This one has much, much less. So I'm going to go ahead and change those really quick. And you can just use, these Mitsubishi boards are normally pretty resilient, so if you saw my other Mitsubishi video on the DLP set, you know that you can just unsolder them quite easily by just pushing and twisting, and then you just have to clean the copper pads with the little legs that remain on the circuit board. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. I'll go ahead and take them off the board real quick. So my two capacitors that I'm going to change here, just give them a twist. Oop, that one actually popped off, slipped out of my pliers. But it fatigues the legs of the capacitors. Make sure that you are pressing down on the board as to not rip the copper trace off of the board. And then all you need to do is get your soldering iron and just give it a quick wipe to get the remaining copper or the pins off of the circuit board. I'm going to add some solder to the pads here, so my new parts will stick nicely. Hopefully you can see that as I'm doing it. I've got my new capacitors prepped here. These are 100 microfarad 16 volts. These are just standard electrolytic capacitors. I prefer to use those over surface mounts whenever possible. I'm just going to tack the bottom lead, tack the top lead, reheat the bottom lead to relieve any pressure that was on it so there's no pressure on the circuit board so it doesn't fatigue over time. Let's do the same thing over here. I know it's hard to see from this angle. There we go. Let's go ahead and fire the set back up here. Okay, the set's on. Let's go ahead and put the probe back on those capacitors that we had so much waveform on before. As we can see, there's virtually anything there right now. Virtually nothing. That one looks very much better. Just for the heck of it, I've got my voltmeter hanging up here. I don't know if you can actually see the face of it or not. Let me try to turn the set just a little bit where you might be able to see the actual voltage on the meter. And let's take a look and see what we have on this regulator IC. We've got the same voltage that we started out with. The only difference is we don't have all that noise. And the power supply is not making that whining sound anymore. And the set has booted up. And we've got power, and we've got a display on the screen. Just for reference on this one, it's capacitor C7G71. And then over here it's C9C60. There we go, set's all working. It does boot up now very quickly. Just do some quick TV codes for you on this one. With your Mitsubishi remote, just make sure you have an original Mitsubishi. Press the buttons menu 2470. And this brings up a setup screen where you can initialize it. You can do some other modifications to it. You can check the software version. If you're on a digital channel, it'll show you the signal strength. Let's go to the other menu, and that one is menu 2457. And now this gets you into some other options. And you change, we're in the formatter board right here, and to change those, press the audio button, use max contrast. To step through each individual item, press the video button. There's brightness, color, tint, green gain high, blue gain high, red gain high, green gain low, blue gain low, and red gain low. We're back to contrast max. Audio steps you through the different modes, so I don't know exactly what all we have to do. These are vague. Mitsubishi does not talk about these codes in the service manual whatsoever, so I don't know, unfortunately, how to get into these and how to make any changes there. But once again, we did save another one from the trash and the recycle, and what tipped me off on this one was the high-pitched whine. And that's what led me to use the oscilloscope to look at the capacitors to determine where the problem was. So hopefully, with your help, we can keep these out of the landfill and out of the recycle box, as the case may be. Once again, thanks for your views, your comments, your support. I try to answer them when I can, but it's been very busy lately. I appreciate all your views. Once again, everybody have a great day. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter at NorCal715. Have a great day. Bye-bye.